So what we have to keep in mind is that ontologically, this is for all A's, right? So in principle, any A could be put in here.
Right.
From the United Nations being an element of the, or from the United States being an element of the United Nations, to, the Pegasus being an element of mythology. So what's important to note is this all is false, right? This statement is false because there's no implication, ontologically speaking, between inclusion and belonging. This statement, however, ontologically speaking, may or may not be true, right? The only way in which you can satisfy this or determine whether this is true is if you satisfy A with a particular term. The term that Badiou is using immediately is what? In this example? It's the void, right? And so he uses the term that is the void, which entails for the void that this is
Right.
true.
It's always true for the void.
Right.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily always true for all sets.
Yeah, for other material sets of extension.
Yes. Okay, so additional
Things that is.
immediate questions.
No additional immediate questions.
Okay,
Well,
because you had one.
What I was going to say was, the way you explained this to me a while ago was the fact that, right, I as a citizen of the United States do not necessarily, like, I'm included in the UN, but I don't belong to the UN.
Right, because you're a subset.
Right.
So yeah, right, when you add the UN, I mean, materially speaking, and again, there's extreme
Right.
conceptual limits to these materials.
Sure.
Biggie.
Are you explaining a situation in which it's false that if you do belong to a set, that
Because
you're not
I'm-
necessarily included
Because
in the set?
because I'm included in the United States does not mean I belong to the. Let me just think of how I should phrase this. Probably. Like,
The fact that you belong to the United States
does not
doesn't
imply that
tell
I
you
belong.
belong to the United Nations, even though the United States belongs to the United Nations.
Right.
But of course, we'll also see there are extreme problematics. This might be conceptually helpful for people, but as we'll see in the meditation on the historical situation, this is categorically false about states, right? You never belong to the state.
Right.
You're only included in it.
Soviet Russia, state belongs to you.
Thank you for that. All right, are we good on the point of excess for now?
It would be state includes you. It's an inclusive democracy.
In any case, we're going to move on to the next. This is no longer a question. Okay, so let's move on to 4, which is the count as one and unicity and the forming of the one. So basically what we have is we have Badiou rehashing the one for the umpteenth millionth time, but he does so at least through 4 specific ways, which help reduce the headache. So we've got 4 specific ways Badiou deals with it. First is the one as the one, i.e. Neo or Platonic God. And basically he says, the one understood in this sense is not. It doesn't exist. There's no one that unifies everything together. Next is the count as one, or a structure which exists as retroaction. And that the void set exists as a name. So in this case, this sort of one does exist, right? There is a retroactive consistency yielded to a set, right? And we'll get into it later, that that's the meta set. And then of course, right, this arises out of the void set. So this sort of one, again, the retroactive ordering of a set does exist.
So is that the result of the procedure?
Yes, that's a result of the procedure. And I mean, we can see this throughout all of our actions. I mean, obviously, it's given a little more of an esoteric bent, but it's worth noting, right? How did we get this set from this set? Okay.
Not getting it.
So, okay, how did we get, maybe Jacob, you want to give this a shot? How did we get this set from this set?
I don't know the nature of your question. Could you
So-
phrase it differently?
Okay,
Well,
what?
I get the fact that, right, A can represent the set of female presidents, which includes the void, because there's no female presidents, right, as such. But taking the power set, like, where does that power set of A?
Okay, so,
The subsets of the sets of female presidents.
Yeah.
Right, that's properly how I should understand that.
Yes and no.
Okay.
That is the proper procedure by which you should understand it. But also, as Joe mentioned in the last lecture, set theory is not imaginary.
Okay.
If you need to imagine these sets as a crutch until you understand the mathematics of it, that's fine. But what you should understand is pure ontology does not depend on these crutches, right? We're talking about a void set. We're not talking about a set that yields a void like, number of female presidents or whatever.
So then it's, what we should properly understand it is the set of the void, and then the power set is the set of the subsets of the void.
Right. So yes, that's exactly right, and I'm gonna run through it. Mathematically speaking, what guarantees that we have this set?
The very necessity of the void being everywhere, in all sets.
No.
Sorry.
This original set is guaranteed by an axiom.
Okay.
Anyone wanna? What axiom? Axiom of the void set.
Okay.
Right? There is a set to which no elements belong. This is axiomatically true that there's a void set. How do we get the power set of that set? How do we get from A to A?
Then it's the case that there's a set of subsets to which no elements belong.
Right. The subset of the null set includes the null.
That's good. Yes, that's all true. But the very procedure by which we get to the power set of the void,
It's in the axiom of extension. No.
you're halfway there. The axiom of the power set.
Okay.
Right, okay, so remember that. There's an axiom of the void, which grants us the void. Then there's the axiom of the power set that allows us to make a power set out of any set. Right? What you'll notice, though, is those are axioms. Right? Where are they in set theory? They're not. They're a forming of one. They're a procedure. They're a retroaction. How do we know how we got this set? Well, retroactively, we know. Inferentially, we got it from the existent null set, and then through the process, the form is one of the power set.
And this axiom is permitted because insofar as any power set is permitted that doesn't bring the one into being. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is there is no power set that brings the one into being. And in this entire section,
That's why you can't have axioms that do that.
Right. Well, and we'll get to that with the axiom of foundation. But again, this is the point of this entire meditation, is because of the theorem of excess, there is no possibility of a power set bringing in the one, right? And this is his critique of Spinoza, right? Go with again, this is a crutch, so pretty soon you're going to want to be able to get off this. Power set of the United Nations doesn't necessarily have an element of Ban Ki-moon, right? So what you would need to have the one is you would have to have a set of all sets. But of course, because of the axiom of, or the theorem of excess, you can't have a set of all sets, right? The power set is, by its very nature, excessive over the situation, right? The state is excessive over the situation. Which is why you don't need in this regard at this time, you don't need an axiom preventing the one. Because the axiom of the void, the axiom of the power set, and the axiom of extension, right, as we went through the theorem of the void, already prevent the one in this regard. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Roll with it for now.
Okay, we'll roll with it for now. We'll do it live. You go write it. We'll do it live. Okay,
I think you should write it.
I think I did. Okay, so the next is that the one can mean unicity, but that's simply a predicate for unique. So this is not controversial, right? From the axiom of extension, the axiom of separation, we're going to have unique sets all the time. What's a unique set? A set that does not include all the elements of another set.
Could I have you, before you move on,
Sure.
distinguish the count as one and the count as effect?
So,
That's on page 90, the first full paragraph.
yeah, let me.
Because you said, of course, that the one as such is not obvious, says it 1,000 times. The count as one is the result of the procedure, so what is the one as effect?
Whose fictive imagining is maintained solely by the structural retroaction for which it's considered. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Set theory doesn't occur in time. This may sound like a weird way to start off, right? But what we don't have is how's it going, Max?
Hey, Greg.
What we don't have is we don't have, first, temporally speaking, a time in which there's the void set, and then over time we apply the axiom, axiom of the power set, right? And so that over time we get, this new set. What we have is we have a set, then we have another set, and there's no distinguishing between them, right? This is the nature of presentation qua presentation. This is why there's universal indifference among sets. So